this is literally Remus's life. So he'd have these like Great Gatsby style parties where guests were gifted like diamond jewelry and new cars just for showing up. Like, this is real life.
So come to the party, you get a car.
Yeah. So it's like, how do I get that gold ticket?
Yeah, seriously.
Who do I gotta to get there?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Who's invited? Is this exclusive invites like rich people?
It was Steve Johnson and the crew.
Yeah. Kirk O'Chains.
Yeah. Kirk rolls up. His Ford Model T.
Yo, 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 welcome into another episode of the show. I'm Ryan O'Leary.
And I'm Mike Zika.
And this, of course, is the Bourbon Playbook. It's just another
podcast in the basement.
That's right, my friends. We've got a really fun episode planned this week. I have never heard of the brand, Zika. That'll surprise absolutely no one. Legit mob boss on the label.
He's the king of the bootleggers, man.
Dude.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm stoked to get into that. We'll get into it later. Support us by spreading the word to your bourbon-loving friends and family, of course. Hit that subscribe button on your favorite platform. Zika, I know you try to score at least one new subscriber every night at the bar that you work, right? And how's that going so far? You building our listenership slowly?
We're getting there, man. We're getting there. Good things take time. Just
one
know
phone
that.
At a time you steal from somebody at the bar?
One or two. And just a friendly reminder, check out the website for bourbon reviews, topics, suggestions. Again, the website's tbplaybook.com. T is in Tim, B is in Brady, playbook.com. And one other quick side note, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Hunters Brook neighbor Kyle for the donation. We appreciate all the donations, guys. They keep pouring in. See what I did there, Ryan?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
We're going to frame them all and put them all on the wall here at the studio.
Exactly.
There it is.
No, we appreciate it, Kyle. Thanks, brother.
NFL free agency. I think we have a double pour in terms of our pours of the week. Are you ready for that?
Born ready. So I labeled this one free agency and farewells.
You always have like a little label. I like that.
Know. Just trying to think of some creative shit over here. I don't know.
Pretty
sometimes
good.
It sticks.
It's good.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I just want to start this off by saying, Skull Nation, stand up. Let's turn the clocks back to the biblical story of Exodus, parting the Red Sea for the 2025 division champion Super Bowl contenders, the Kings of the North, your Minnesota Vikings.
I'll give you this. They are fucking stacked.
They are.
This roster that the Vikings have put together is unbelievable. They've done a great job. They spent a ton of money in free agency so far. I think they spent like almost $300 million if you add it all up. They're like up there, 280, something like that. I think the last time I checked, of all the money they've committed. No lie. The Vikes are legit. That roster is scary.
And they had to spend some money, right? But one of my favorite tweets or quotes that I read this week was, and I quote, "Kwesi's cooking in the kitchen while the Kevinly father is setting the table to feast." How sick is that, dude?
That's good. I like that. No, they're good. They're going to eat this year. What else you got? Is that it? You just want to? Yeah. You're reveling that it's a new season. Officially, a new season is upon us. It's now 2025. You can put last year's debacle at the end behind you with the Vikes, 14-3 to just complete dumpster fire in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's
9 sacks.
The past, Ryan.
Yeah.
We live in the moment. We know that as a Vikings fan.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I wanted to say farewell to a few good men that we lost.
Oh, so many good men out there.
Playing with the Yankees?
Yes, with the Yankees, you lose good men to trades and unruly fans. I don't want to talk about it. I'm sorry.
Sam Darnold, Darny Darts, R.I.P.
Yo, Sam, we love you. What a season. That was not expected. Good luck in your next endeavor. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel how it is. Like, I don't think anyone's all that shaken up that he's gone, but it's a lot of appreciation for Darnold. Like, that was a fun year because of him. He was a great story, but also everyone's like, okay, good luck in Seattle.
Yeah, it's kind of like use and abuse and send you back to the shelter a
I
little
don't
bit.
think nobody's shedding a tear that he left.
No. I mean, because we're super hopeful and grateful for the MVP next year, JJ McCarthy. So we got a lot to look forward to. And not only, farewell to Darnay Darts, but Cam Bynum, gone but not forgotten, right?
Dude, the viral celebration artist.
Right.
His dances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Made himself a lot of money. I'm not all that surprised they didn't bring him back at that number. I think he got like 3 years, 60 mil. Good for him.
Yeah. I mean, 80% of it was the play on the field, and the other 20% were the dance moves off the field.
Yeah.
So
you need those social media impressions really matter to teams. Yeah. Got to bring them in for that.
Sell those jerseys,
Yeah, seriously. I like buying them.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
But hey, the positives, you're the sports writer, right? I know Vikings football fairly well, right? Like I'd say a diehard Vikes fan, but I don't know everything, especially when it comes to like interior linemen, like player positions I get, right? They're pretty straightforward, but a couple pickups. So Ryan Kelly, center, Will Fries, right guard. So JJ McCarthy can literally finally breathe, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever quarterback is going to be starting. But then also Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave. I mean, the trenches just got a little bit meaner, right?
Those guys on the defensive side, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a big problem. Like you saw how important last year interior defensive pressure is from your linemen, right? The Vikings weren't able to get it done against a couple of statuesque pocket passers like Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford at the end. Couldn't get enough pressure on those guys. They picked the Vikings apart. But a team like the Eagles were able to just wreck everybody because they could push the pocket from the middle and make people, even Patrick Mahomes, uncomfortable and have nowhere to run. So yeah, the interior line, not something you think about, right, as a fan too often, but interior offensive line, interior defensive line, two huge needs, and the Vikings just like aggressively went after it and threw a bunch of money at it this offseason, and they brought in some real guys. So I'm excited. You should be too. I mean, fans should be really excited. The Vikings, like I said, their roster is absolutely stacked. They had a lot of needs coming into the free agency, but they're addressing them.
Yeah, and I mean,
aggressively.
Like when I saw, my phone blow up about Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, it kind of reminded me of that Happy Gilmore quote of like, who the hell is Happy Gilmore?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, that's not a player position that I know. But after reading a little bit more and talking to you about it, totally agree. And just talking about the Super Bowl, right? About Patrick Mahomes, you brought up a great point. Like that interior line just collapsed. How much did that defensive interior line just destroy their offensive guards and tackles, right? I mean, you saw that the entire game. So I'm really excited to kind of see what all comes to fruition here with the Vikes in 25.
For me, when I saw Darnold's contract, 3 years, $110 million, they're paying him $36 million a year. That sounds like a lot of money, right? To the casual person, normal, everyday guy. That's a lot of money for Sam Darnold, right? Who's had one good year in his career, never won a playoff game in his career. But then you look it up and it's like, oh, Darnold at $36 million a year is like the 18th highest paid quarterback in football. Like that's actually coming off a Pro Bowl year, which he had for the Vikings last season. That's a pretty good number for him. That's not an overpay. I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, the Seahawks overpaid for Darnold. I don't agree with that. I think that's a really reasonable contract for Darnold. The fact that the Vikings weren't interested in that shows me that they weren't all that serious in bringing him back ever. I know there was reports that they were trying to bring him back, but the fact that the Vikings were like, no, thank you, we're not going to do $100 million over 3 years or something of the like, tells me they weren't really that serious in bringing Darnold back and they're ready for McCarthy, which I think for Vikes fans, let's go. Like that's the ideal situation, right? Like we didn't really want to watch Daniel Jones next year. We want to watch JJ McCarthy be the guy. It's his turn. Let's see what we got. Maybe he'll suck. We've never seen him really play before in the NFL.
Yeah.
So we'll find out besides like one preseason game. But, it's blind faith. Let's see what we got. I think so far what we've seen, based on what they've done so far, the team has a lot of faith in him. And they're going with McCarthy. That's what them passing on Darnold at that number kind of told me, I guess, in my mind.
Yeah, which brings up another good point, right? Speaking of the quarterback situation, I mean, are we at the point where we're going to bring back like T-Jax or Christian Ponder? You know what I mean? Like, and for me, I think we're going to hand the torch to JJ, right? But I mean, to see Aaron Rodgers come back like the 2008, 2009 season, like Favre did, would be absolutely wild, right? But at the same time, when you bring Rodgers on your team, I kind of have a soft spot for him because he's just, kind of down to earth, big picture, hippie, ayahuasca dude. And I'm like,
hippie.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of, vibe with him on that. but I feel like he brings a lot of drama. I feel like he likes to bring his own army and kind of call the shots. And I feel like KOC would, for as reserved as he is, I feel like they might clash heads a little bit. You know what I mean? He's like, hey, you better take a back seat, Mr. Rogers. Like this is my playhouse. You know what I mean?
Rogers, I'm not in on that. You've read my articles.
Right. Yeah,
I'm not in on Rogers because
I've thumbs down those articles. Yes,
because I want McCarthy to start.
Right.
I think that's the point of this season. I think if you bring in Rogers, McCarthy's not starting. He's definitely the number 2 guy, and I've seen some stuff like, well, if the Vikings bring in Rogers, it would only be for a year. Says who? When has Rodgers said he's going to play one more year?
Never.
And honestly, in a vacuum, Rodgers gives them a better chance in 2025. I really believe that. McCarthy hasn't taken an NFL snap yet. So to say that he'd be better than Rodgers is just crazy talk, right? Even at 41 or whatever the hell Rodgers is. I think he's 41.
Yeah.
I still think Rodgers is the better guy right now, but you're just like putting yourself in this box and like, if you don't win the Super Bowl, which, by the way, Rodgers only won one, and he had some stacked Green Bay teams, and he only won one Super Bowl. So there's no guarantee you're winning a Super Bowl with Rodgers.
Fair.
So you might not get there, but you might win a lot of games. You might be back in the same kind of weird spot next season where Rodgers is still on your team, and you're trying to figure out, is it McCarthy, or we're doing the same thing again next offseason? I just think enough of that already, right? We just did that all offseason with Darnold. Now it's JJ's turn. I'd rather not pay Rodgers a boatload of money to come in and like, I don't know, be the hero. I don't know if this team needs a hero. Their roster's stacked. They just need like good quarterback play. Don't kill us. Don't turn it over. Back-breaking interceptions like Darnold was doing at one point in the season when KOC kind of reined it in. Don't take as many sacks as Darnold did last year and just throw the ball to Justin Jefferson and let's go win games. I think if you get serviceable quarterback play with this Vikings team, you're going to be fine because they got studs all over the place. So
the beauty in this game is that every year is a new year, and the opportunity to change and make changes and be a part of the solution is going to be out there. So whether I'm back or whether it's the guys they got or new guys or whatever, the focus has to be how can I, player, be a part of the solution, not the problem.
So I never technically said who I'm pouring this out for or
right.
why.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. I did label this as free agency and farewells, but I want to end on a positive note. This week I want to pour it out to the 14-year Cole Killa, who just signed a 1-year, $10 million deal.
Harry.
A true legend at safety. We love you, Hitman. Hitman Harry, baby.
He's back.
Harrison Smith. He's back.
They needed him because Cam Bynum's gone. They need more safeties.
Yeah. He might be on crutches half the season, but damn.
Need all the safeties we can get over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to have Harrison Smith back.
Absolutely. Cheers, Skull Nation.
Ole, 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 ole. Hey, cheers, babes.
All right, Ryan, enough about the 2025 Super Bowl contenders. Pour of the week, man. What do you got?
Yeah, as I said, double pour. I'm gonna pour one out to free agency as well. Just gonna go a little bit of a different direction here because, as you know, I love the NFL. Huge NFL nerd. I always have been. When I was a little kid, I used to like write little pretend sports articles in my notebook. Like I was a huge NFL nerd.
That's so cute.
Shut up. But I always have, always will. I always love the NFL. I literally consume and create NFL content all day, every day, day, night, holidays, weekends. That's my life. I love it. I can't help myself. I love the damn thing. And this week, this NFL free agency, it literally used to be like my favorite week on the calendar. It's so fun to see superstar players switching teams all the time in the NFL. I feel like they're the best in that they're kind of the gold standard in terms of the pro leagues, like superstar players switching teams.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. It's great. But today in the modern day version of the game, it's kind of turning into like a giant circle jerk session. And I'm kind of over it. Like this week has been, it's just starting to annoy me. Each year kind of annoys me even more. And I'll try to explain why.
Yeah, why is that? What's this big circle jerk and why am I not invited?
Yeah, hopefully this makes sense. Actually, you're not high ranking enough for this circle jerk. This is a very high ranking. You have to be like Adam Schefter to be in this one. And
That's fair.
Even I can't get in there.
Not even Henry McKinnon would be able to join the...
Henry's closer. Henry's a lot closer to the circle. So first of all, the quote-unquote legal tampering period for free agents, do you know what I'm talking about when I dropped that line?
I do not.
Okay, so NFL free agency this year started on Wednesday, March 12th, but there was a quote-unquote legal tampering window on the Monday and Tuesday, the 10th and the 11th, right? And they've been doing this for the last few years, and basically all this is you can't sign a player until March 12th, but during the legal tampering window, quote-unquote, you could legally negotiate and agree to terms of a contract. You just can't sign a player until Wednesday. So what teams are doing is, for instance, the Vikings worked out their deal with Byron Murphy on Tuesday night, right, to keep their cornerback, one of their top free agents, but they couldn't sign him to that deal until Wednesday because there is a tampering window, but it's not really legal to sign a free agent yet. It's complicated, but it's really not. All this is a way for the league to funnel this information to the national guys like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport and these national douchebags on that you see on TV or on Twitter. And now guys like me, fans like myself, have to sit there and click and refresh on Adam Schefter's stupid Twitter page to get the news. You know what I mean? That's all it is. And it's all just a way for them to kind of stroke their ego. And again, the circle jerk, right? They're just stroking their ego.
Yeah.
So now Adam Schefter gets to announce the information before anybody else, including your local beat guys that are out there actually grinding and covering the team. It's all a big show for the national guys. They get to announce the information. One thing that's really driving me crazy now is they announce the agents too. So Adam Schefter is like, so-and-so is signing a 3-year deal, $60 million with the Vikings. Deal negotiated by Drew Rosenhaus. It's like, who the fuck cares who negotiated the deal? Like, we never used to do that. Now we have to give the agent credit. Why? Because the agent is the guy texting the message to Adam Schefter, who then puts it into his Twitter. So that it's just like it's a bunch of clowns sitting around massaging their egos and getting to quote unquote break the news. It's just weird. So it's just like annoying.
So let me ask you, what did it used to be before these clowns circle jerking in the middle of the room?
That's a great question because I can barely remember when we didn't have social media. You know what I mean?
I suppose.
I feel like it was like watching SportsCenter or watching your local sports shows and stuff and getting your information the old-fashioned way, reading articles.
Yeah.
Now we're refreshing social media. It's just modern day. It's just, but to me, it's just annoying. That's number one. Number two, reason why I think free agency has now become super overrated and annoying is because local beat guys and fans, I think we're all in a bucket together where you can't say anything critical at all anymore. Everything is just like, you just roll with everything and everything's great. The Eagles are a team that I write content for, so I follow them pretty closely, and the Eagles are in a very interesting situation where they've paid a lot of their guys early. So they've committed a lot of future cash to their players like Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, their offensive linemen, Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata, their left tackle. All these guys are signed through like 2028, like big contracts, big future money. The salary cap doesn't mean anything. It's all about the cash that you have committed to your team, and the Eagles are like number one in the NFL over the next couple of years in real cash committed to their guys. Their owner could only approve so much cash before he's like, okay, we're really dipping into my bottom line here, right? You can't just, and also you got the other 32 cheap-ass owners that are going to be like, hey, yo, Eagles, rein it in. This is why we have a fake salary cap. Like, we can't spend this much, even though you really can. You can manipulate the cap, as we've talked about. The Eagles have spent so much cash on their guys that they've signed one free agent, and it's a backup running back so far. Well, the Vikings have made like 9 moves, right?
Yeah.
They've signed a ton of guys. The Eagles have signed one guy, A.J. Dillon, backup running back, who didn't even play football last year.
Yeah, Thunder Thighs.
Yeah, Thunder Thighs of the Green Bay Packers. Exactly. Yeah. That's their only signing, but they've lost Milton Williams to my Patriots. They lost Josh Sweat, edge rusher who had 3 sacks in the Super Bowl. He's an Arizona Cardinal. They lost Isaiah Rodgers, good little cornerback, good depth guy. He's on the Vikings now.
I was just going to say, yeah.
They lost all these players, but Eagles fans would be like, oh, yeah, trust Howie Roseman, baby. It's Howie season. Oh, we have all these young guys. They're ready to step up. We're good. It's like, no, guys, actually, can we just tell it like it is? It's the reality. Like, they've prioritized their offensive skill position guys, their offensive linemen, over these defensive players, so they're letting them go. Fine. I guess we can rationalize that as like smart business. They just won a Super Bowl, so I'm not going to say it's stupid, but can we just say they just lost a ton of really good players off their Super Bowl championship roster and got worse over the last couple. Is that okay to say? Like, that's fact. They lost really good players and they got worse. But you're not allowed to say that without being a raging a-hole and being a hater.
Well, I think also people are just so attached and glued to their phone. So if they get, anybody on social media saying something positive, like it sounds like from your take, there's too many positive Peters out there, not enough opinionated people.
Yeah. I come from the Boston sports scene. So it's like all critical. You never say anything positive about your team. It's just all railing. Like, nothing's good enough. And that's like ingrained to me now. So it's not my fault, guys, for being such an a-hole. It's probably more me than anybody else. But yeah, critical analysis is dead, man.
It's good that we have people like you.
Yeah, thank God for me.
Yeah.
And Caped Crusader, one-man band out here.
Respect, man.
So why did I need a bourbon? Free agency. Free agency drove me fucking bananas this week, and that's why I needed a bourbon.
All right, so this week we're diving into George Remus Straight Bourbon Whiskey Cask Strength. So we're looking at about an MSRP of somewhere around $50 or $60, 110.1 proof.
Okay, so this is like when I like to pick up the bottle and just give you my opinion.
Give it a once over.
I've never tried this or seen this bottle before, so that makes me excited.
Yeah.
And also, it's George, right? Like, this is George. Like, we've talked about
your dad, George.
my stepdad, George. Stepdad, George. Don't get him confused with the Budman again.
Yeah, missing the cig and the leather jacket.
But George is there. Like, you've met George. Like,
great guy.
He's like he's into like all the mobster movies too. Like that's his thing. And like all he wears is black leather coat, like that whole thing. And I feel like George Remus here. Yeah. If you take the top hat off, the suit, put him in a black t-shirt and put a cigarette in his mouth, he's my stepdad, George. That's him. So that's hilarious to me. So the king of the bootleggers, it literally says that on the bottle. So it's kind of fun to see a mob boss on the cover of a whiskey bottle. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like looking at it, I just, the bottle's pretty cool. I mean, it's your typical bourbon bottle, right? But, just looking at it, I look at this gentleman and my first reaction is, wow, that's a smug ass look on his face. Like, what has this guy been through to get his face on the front of this bottle? You know what I mean?
But also you wouldn't say that to his face.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. I guarantee he's got a Tommy gun in his back pocket.
He's in Home Alone. He's the guy shooting the Tommy gun.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Yeah, just looking at the bottle, he's got that smug-ass look on his face, and then right below it, it says George Remus, King of the Bootleggers, which is kind of a badass title.
That is badass.
Let's dive into the history, shall we?
This bourbon's going to have a rich history, so I'm here for it. Let's go.
Absolutely. So the wild history of George Remus and his bourbon legacy. So who was George Remus? He wasn't just the name slapped on a bottle for sure. So he's a real life bootlegging kingpin during Prohibition. So he was born in Germany in 1878, and then he moved to the U.S. to become a successful defense lawyer, often representing bootleggers, right? So that's kind of how he got his start into this crazy realm, especially during that time. So realizing that he could make more money breaking the law than defending those who did, he immediately quit law and became one of the most notorious whiskey smugglers of the 1920s.
Now, couldn't anybody do that though? Like, if you want to break the law, you can make all kinds of money, right? You want to try to like hack or do what, fraud. You could do all kinds of stuff to like make more money if you just want to break the law.
Especially in the 1920s, like no public ledgers or no blockchain or any of that BS.
That was like the golden age of like crime, right? You could just like rob a bank and they wouldn't be able to even communicate with the police for like hours. You know what I mean? Like,
just toss a body in the meat grinder and feed it to the pigs.
Gosh.
Man. All right, that got a little dark.
Is that an episode of Fargo?
Yes.
It literally was.
Yeah, actually.
I've seen that show too.
Good call out.
Yeah, that was good.
So the king of the bootleggers. So unlike Al Capone, Remus didn't smuggle liquor though. He legally bought distilleries under the loophole allowing whiskey for medicinal purposes.
Common thing in the Prohibition era.
Very common.
But buying distilleries, maybe that wasn't so common.
Well, I assume a lot of them went under at this time, right? So you probably got them, pennies to the dollar.
Like basically foreclosure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So instead of selling it legally, he stole his own whiskey and funneled it into his own speakeasies, which is actually a genius move, and it also made him insanely rich. So at his peak, this is a crazy fact, he controlled over 30% of all illegal liquor in the United States of America.
He's like the liquor cartel. You know?
Truly.
It's wild.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
So when we think of Leonardo DiCaprio and like The Great Gatsby, right? This is literally Remus's life. So he'd have these like Great Gatsby style parties where guests were gifted like diamond jewelry and new cars just for showing up. Like this is real life.
So come to the party, you get a car.
Yeah. So it's like, how do I get that gold ticket?
Yeah, seriously.
Who do I gotta to get there?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Who's invited? Is this exclusive invites like rich people?
It was Steve Johnson and the crew.
Yeah. Kirk O'James.
Yeah. Kirk rolls up. His Ford Model T. But in 1925, the government finally caught up with him, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison.
It does not seem long enough.
2 years in prison. 30% of all illegal liquor sales in the U.S., and he gets 2 years in prison. And I don't know exactly the backstory behind this, and I should have looked it up, but I wonder if it's because he was such a successful defense lawyer and how he played into that gave him 2 years, again, for owning and controlling 30% of illegal liquor sales in the United States.
Yeah, it feels like it was worth it for him. That's not a lot of time to serve.
Right, yeah. So this is when it kind of took a dark turn, right? So kind of like murder madness in the aftermath of his life. So while he was locked up, his wife actually ran off with one of the federal agents that put him away, stole his fortune, and tried to have him deported.
Okay, so I'm going to say that the wife wasn't a big fan of his business dealings.
Yeah, I think...
Or him in general.
No, not a huge fan.
Yeah.
I think he was probably a little mischievous in his parties and probably didn't give her a lot of attention.
Mm.
So when Remus was released, he actually shot his wife in broad daylight in Cincinnati's Eden Park. So that happened.
I hate to say this. She might have had it coming, though. I mean, he is like a basically a mob boss, right? Stole his cash, tried to have him deported, ran off with the dude that put him in prison. I mean, she had to know, like, yo, he's only locked up for 2 years, and when he comes out, like, let's be far away from wherever he is. Like, let's out of the country. Like,
guns blazing. Let's go to Puerto Rico. Let's bounce. We got the money. Let's go.
For all the things she did while he was locked up, I can't say like I'm surprised that he came after her.
Right.
But now I want to know what happens next. Did he go back to prison? Great
question. He did not. So despite confessing, he actually got off with an insanity plea. Like this just keeps getting crazier and crazier, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the first successful cases in U.S. history of an individual actually getting off for insanity plea for manslaughter. And again, I think this all ties back into him being a defense lawyer. Like there's no way, and I should have looked this up for the pod, but
he's just finding loopholes in the system.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Which he clearly was good at doing anyway.
Correct.
Yeah.
He's clearly probably a psychopath genius too, maybe a little narcissist.
Yeah.
So that helps kind of play into it. But after a brief stay in a mental institution, he lived out the rest of his days until he quietly passed in 1952.
So he has a brief stay in the mental institution, then he's back free?
Correct.
And then he dies naturally.
Yep. He realized...
What a life. This dude was just out there like not living by the rules at all. Just doing whatever the hell he wanted. Murder. Bootlegging.
I think your question is why name a bourbon after him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why is his face on this bottle? That's what I want to know. Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, he wasn't just a bootlegger. So he owned and operated real distilleries, making him a very, very key figure in the bourbon history itself. So his life, was filled with power and rebellion, much like the kind of bold, high-proof bourbon that now bears his name. So MGP in Indiana is one of the largest whiskey producers in the U.S. So choosing to honor his legacy with a Prohibition-inspired high rye bourbon is definitely the direction that they went for this specific bottle. So this bottle is known for its rich caramel heavy profile, full-bodied spice, and Remus is a powerhouse pour, just like the man himself.
Yeah, he's almost glorified like Al Capone or something in history, right? Like a dude who's not a good dude, and maybe went down several wrong turns in life, right? But super powerful and a figure in history. So he gets on the label.
He's like the Tony Soprano of bourbon.
Yeah, that's it. He looks like him too.
He does. Smug, just missing a lot of hair.
An MGP bourbon. That's interesting because we talked about that during the Penelope episode. Midwest Grain Products is MGP, right?
Correct. Yep.
They help. We talked about during that Penelope episode. They help brands kind of, I don't want to say cut corners, but they expedite the process where you can get a barrel based on some ingredients or a mash bill you're looking for. You can get a barrel that's been aged a certain amount of time, bring it back to your facility, finish the aging process, and slap your label on it and call it your bourbon, right? How does MGP and George Remus, like they're the same company?
So first off, I'd like to commemorate you on truly taking out your pen and pencil and college ruled notebook paper.
Yes, I'm flipping through my notes.
Because that's actually really good. I'm surprised you memorized all that. You got a
steel trap, baby.
Steel trap.
I pay attention during the history.
You do,
I
honestly.
do. No,
honestly,
that the MGP episode and the Penelope one was one of my. That one was like really interesting because I had never heard of that.
Right.
And it makes a ton of sense. Like, how does a bourbon that started 5 years ago have a bourbon aged 6 years? That doesn't make any sense because of MGP. That makes sense. But you said MGP was the one that honored George Remus. So now my wheels are spinning on how the hell does that work? Because I thought of them as a third party.
Correct. And they are, but they also do have some in-house products as well. So George Remus Bourbon is actually owned by Luxco, which is a subsidiary of MGP, Midwest Grain Products, right? So just kind of the ownership breakdown side of it. So MGP Ingredients is a major distiller based in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, which we spoke about in previous episodes, known for producing whiskey for lots of different brands. So Luxco was acquired by MGP in 2021. So bringing brands like, George Remus, Ezra Brooks, Rebel, Blood Oath, all of these are directly under the ownership of MGP. So George Remus Bourbon is distilled and produced at MGP in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. So it's one of the most well-known whiskey producers, obviously, in the USA.
So this is, they're almost like a parent company for certain brands.
Correct. So in short, MGP owns George Remus Bourbon, and it's produced in-house rather than being sourced out like your Penelopes.
Okay.
It's funny, they actually have a Gatsby edition of the Remus. It comes in like a Gatsby-looking bottle. It's super dope. I'll have to show you a picture of it, but maybe we'll try it on the pod at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
But Ezra Brooks, Rebel, Blood Oath, I mean, these are all very popular brands that most bourbon enthusiasts would definitely kind of tip their hat to.
Want to pop this thing open?
Let's do it.
All right.
So on the nose, what are we vibing with there, Ryan?
For me, right off the bat, without cheating, it smells like your classic vanilla caramel, right?
Yeah.
Getting the same?
Vanilla caramel, and there's some kind of fruit, but it does hit kind of heavy with ethanol. I don't get a ton of
you can't drive your nose in.
No. So like last week when we covered Henry McKenna, I mean, there was a ton on the nose, right? And it was really prevalent. It was really in your face. Whereas this one, it's a little bit muted to me. All right, moment of truth.
That's a spicy meatball!
Fuck.
Did that hit you a little harder than you expected?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that chew was a spicy meatball.
Very spicy.
Like spice on the front, like sometimes it's not, sometimes that spice kicks you on the finish. I felt like this was like spice on the palate hard, but that was just the chew.
It's funny you say that because the front of my gums of my teeth
are numb right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tingling right now.
What are we doing over here?
Yeah. It feels like I'm getting some dental work done.
Am I at the club? What's going on?
Yeah.
You know what's going to hit hard? When one of the tasting notes is cinnamon heat.
Cinnamon heat. Yeah. I get that. It's very spicy.
Which is funny to me because when I think of like cinnamon heat, what are those red candies?
Oh, the hot tamales?
Hot tamales.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me of like that cinnamon hot tamale.
Okay.
The tip of your tongue, you're going to get like that caramel with the oak. And then on the sides of your tongue, it's immediately going to go to that like cinnamon heat or the hot tamales.
It finishes on the tongue a little bit with that, right? Now that I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it.
So I think this one is fairly complex with a longer finish. I do really enjoy it because I'm tasting multiple notes on my tongue. So I got the caramel, I got the oak, I got those kind of hot tamale cinnamon spices.
Yeah.
And then there's a little bit in there that's giving me some sweetness. And I don't know if that's like dark cherries or what it is, because it's consumed by that spicy rye and the finish, which is like a mid to long finish. So it's a full bodied, long to mid finish, fairly complex bourbon. And I personally just enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I'm fired up. I like this a lot. But I think what you're going to tell me when we get into the mash bill and such is that this is very close to a rye whiskey, because I think I'm starting to realize that I like that flavor profile a little bit.
So to answer your looming question, Ryan, the mash bill is actually 60% corn.
Super lower number.
Right. So what do you think is going to be a higher number?
I'm going to go with rye.
Ooh, close.
Barley?
Eh.
What else is there? It's usually rye.
It's rye.
It's usually
You're right.
No, it's usually corn, rye, malted barley. That's been like ingrained in me from doing this week after week after week.
Ooh, pun intended. I see what you did there.
Ingrained in me?
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But yeah, 60% corn, 36% rye, which is extremely high. That's the highest rye that we've had on the pod thus far.
What's the cutoff for it to be a bourbon versus a rye whiskey?
51% corn.
Okay.
I personally haven't had any 49% ryes, but I'm sure they're out there. I don't know.
That really toe that line.
But that would be why, like, even to have anything over like 20% rye to me is like, okay, so like you're going that direction.
And we're talking 36.
36%.
They took this to the extreme. Like, this is probably, in terms of, mash bills towing the line between bourbon and rye whiskey, this one's really towing that line.
Rye whiskey,
E5, Zika. Am I going first like usual, or do you want to go first this time?
You got it, boss.
Okay. So, quick rundown. Daily dram. Your bourbons you drink daily, sipping on them daily every evening or
Twice a day.
lunchtime, whenever. Impress my guests. One where the crew comes over. You want to pour some bourbon for them, try to impress them a little bit, tell a story. I think this bourbon might fit in that one. This one has a good story. You could talk about, bootlegging and murder and all kinds of stuff. You could entertain the boys and the wives. This is a good story. Budget blend. Those bourbons on your shelf. This is one we've debated quite a bit throughout the pod as we've gone through. Budget blend is for you. It's a little bit of a higher end bourbon, one that you can put that will shine through in a mix, right? Like a Manhattan or a old fashioned, but also something you could pour for yourself while you're mixing that Manhattan and sip on neat. For me, budget blend, I just think of garbage. Like, it's a budget blend. Like, it's low budget, run of the mill, not quite going to make my top cut, right?
Yep.
So we have different versions of that, but
Correct.
I'm starting to understand what the scale is because you created the scale. So I'm trying to make
it's subjective though. Don't get too carried away.
Yeah.
So I respect that.
Budget blend, Saturday night sipper, speaks for itself. It's one of your all-star pours that you don't want to necessarily give to your guests because you love that bourbon and you want it to be on your shelf, and maybe you sip on it once a week so it lasts a little bit longer, but it's one that you can get relatively easily. It's not the most rare bourbon in the world, right? But it's one that's kind of special to you, and it's one that you like to pour on a Saturday night while you're watching Netflix. And then your precious pour, which is the PJ Fleck, as we like to say here, the elite pour.
Elite.
Your precious pour is your bourbon that is saved for special occasions, right? You have it on your shelf or maybe in your cabinet, but it's kind of tucked away, and it's one that you might pour when there's a baby on the way or a big life milestone, a career milestone, something like that. Something a bourbon that you paid some money for and you're saving it. Maybe you haven't even opened it yet. You're waiting for the right occasion. That's the precious pour. The only precious pour we've had so far was a sample that you brought over. What was it? The Weller
Foolproof.
Weller Foolproof.
Blue Label. Fantastic pour.
So good. Yeah, it was probably number one on the list for both of us so far on the pod. It was fantastic. I'm going to say right now, George Remus, love you, mean it. You're not a precious pour, right? Okay, so I'm going to eliminate precious pour.
Wow, 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 wow.
Slide my way back up to the top. Daily Dram. Daily Dram's a tough one for me. Like it's got to be like that bourbon that you're sipping on it daily. So it's got to be the right price, the right taste. It's got to hit a lot of different notes.
Yep.
Help me out here. Is this a Daily Dram? Like for me, I lean no on Daily Dram with this one. I like it. It's a nice, spicy, interesting rye forward bourbon. So it's interesting, but I don't know if I want this one every single day.
Right. I think when
Not
it
super
comes
sweet.
Yeah, correct. And I think when it comes to Daily Dram, I think of a bourbon under $30 that I can kind of find everywhere that I also enjoy sipping on, right? So it's hard for me because I want to put Buffalo Trace in this like Buffalo Trace is the perfect Daily Dram.
Yeah, we've talked about that, but you can't find it everywhere.
If I live in the South.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of haters and every one of my bourbon enthusiast bourbon buddies are going to hate me for saying this, but Old Tub, I haven't had it for probably a year.
Jim Beam, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a Jim Beam product. I think that's like a Daily Dram to me. Okay. It's like super cheap. It's 20 some bucks, and I enjoy it. You know what I mean? So subjectively, that's my Daily Dram if I had to choose.
So my perception of the budget blend is almost more of a Daily Dram.
Right.
Based on the integrity of the E5.
For you, yeah. But for me on the budget blend, I go anything under $50 or around that price point that I can mix a cocktail with. And it's typically going to be around 100 proof just for the cocktail's sake. And then I can also pour a little, Glencairn for myself and enjoy that on the side.
Yep. I think with this bourbon, it's not a Daily Dram for me, just because I feel like this is a bourbon that I'd have to be in the mood for, right?
Correct.
It's different, and that's a good thing. But you're not always going to be in the mood for George Remus. I don't think so. I'm gonna skip Daily Dram. I think Impressed by Guests is definitely on the list because you can tell the story, you can draw the parallels to Leo DiCaprio and the Gatsby movie, the Great Gatsby.
Getting diamonds and gold chains just for showing up, giving high fives, getting the car on your way home.
Honestly, like the star, like even better than the sip is the history with this one, right? This is a great history lesson that you gave us because, the fact that he's just like, yeah, I'm a successful lawyer, but I can make more money like bootlegging whiskey, so I'm going to do that instead.
And side note, this is definitely a party you just want to Uber to and then drive your car back home that you just got from
your gifted car.
Mr. Remus.
Yeah. The car you were gifted for showing up. You're getting cars and diamonds just for showing up to this Diddy party. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck is going on here?
Diddy party, real life in 2023, maybe?
1920 Diddy party. Like, holy crap. It's crazy. So, yeah, I think the story here is unbelievable. Never mind the fact that the government finally catches up with him. They put him in prison. Not long enough, just 2 years. Just long enough for him to get out and murder his wife, who had run away with the guy that prosecuted him. Also, she stole all his money and all kinds of other stuff, right? So
straight cash, homie.
Yeah. Tried to get him deported, right?
Yeah.
That was another part of the story. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a hilarious story that would be really fun to break out if you had buddies over and you can pour this for them, maybe drop an ice cube or some water in it. At what is this, 110 proof?
110 proof. Give him a gold chain on the way out.
Yeah, exactly. Give him a present. Give him a car. Give him your Subaru at the garage on their way out.
Never, dude. I give him a Hot Wheels car for sure.
Seriously, give him a car and a diamond on the way out. I think Impressed by Guests is definitely in the conversation. I love the story here. So you could sip on this with your guests and tell them the story, and that would be a really fun night. Budget blend. Budget blend. I always say this every single week. I say this. MSRP. Remind me.
Around 50 to 60. This is a store pick though. So I would say the range would be from 50 to about 70, maybe 50 to 60. So it is a little bit, in my subjective opinion, a little bit outside of that budget blend.
Saturday Night Sipper, I think this is definitely in that ballpark as well, right? Because I said earlier, this is a bourbon that I think I would want to be in the mood for.
Yeah.
Maybe you're in the mood for this on a Saturday night. It's on your shelf and you want to pull it out and pour it, and you like a spicy bourbon, and one that has a nice long finish, and it kind of lingers on the tongue, the spice. I can see it. So I'm kind of torn, man. I lean impress my guests, actually, I think. For me, it's like the story. The story alone. And the bourbon's good. I don't think anyone's going to drink this and say, well, this is garbage, right? It's clearly like a better than average bourbon. But like the story with the murder and the bootlegging and everything else is fantastic. So I think I'm going to impress my guest. Final answer. What do you think?
Great conclusion. I'm also stuck between impress my guest and Saturday Night Sipper. The daily dram, no. Too high proof, too expensive. Impress my guest, yes. Love the conversation piece around it. Budget blend, no. Again, a little bit more on the expensive side. Plus, the proof is fairly high. Saturday Night Sipper could go in that category. Love the flavor. Again, like you mentioned, it's something that I wouldn't want every Saturday night. Yeah.
It's like you got to be in the mood for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially looking at my bourbon collection, I'm like, there's probably about, I don't know, roughly about 10, 15 bourbons that I'd grab over this one. So I'm going to exclude that from the Saturday Night Sipper. PJ Fleck would not be impressed with this bourbon.
He wouldn't do a speech?
Not elite enough. No chance. So I think my final answer is impress my guests. I think George Remus in general was just like a pioneer of his time. Very intelligent, right? Lawyer, defense lawyer at heart. Knew the loopholes, clearly ahead of his time. And for me, being a bourbon guy that enjoys a very corn-forward, mash bill, I think that this one is still very delicious, even though it's extremely high on the rye side, 36%, wild. And the fact that I can still pick out like 4 or 5 different notes in the, on the palate, for me, that's like, yeah, if I can pick that out, then I can also impress my guests with not only on the palate, but also on the story behind Mr. George Remus.
And with that, thanks for tuning in to the Bourbon Playbook. We learned that George Remus was basically the real-life inspiration for Gatsby, and also maybe the original Florida man.
And if this bourbon teaches us anything, it's that high-proof whiskey is dangerous.
Yeah.
But not as dangerous as stealing George Remus's wife, let's be honest.
That's so true. That is so true. And cheers. May your bourbon be strong, but your life choices be stronger. Remember, folks, always bootleg if you can get away with it.
Cheers.